basically this is an outline of what your materials and methods should contain. You begin with the aim, exhaustive technical description of your study design, and again an exhaustive description of your methods and tools which are used to conduct the study. And finally you end it with statistics which are being used. So when you come to aims and objectives, in the beginning you need to clearly state what are the aims of your study and what questions you are seeking to answer with the results of your study. Now, after the aims, you talk about a hypothesis. The hypothesis is something, it is a theory in which you state what you believe you would find before you start the study. So the results will help you either approve or disprove this hypothesis. So we begin with the aims and objectives. Now, coming to the study design, basically selection of the study design depends on again on your aim. What exactly are you trying to prove? What exactly are you trying to show? And the study design is hence based on the purpose. Now, these are a few examples of study designs, different types of studies which we encounter: therapeutic study, prognostic, diagnostic, economic, and decision. We commonly deal with therapeutic studies. So therapeutic studies, we've got randomized control trial, which is considered to be a very high level of evidence, followed by a comparative study, which can be either retrospective, prospective, case control study, or a case series. Now, when we talk about retrospective study, we are talking about looking back, as in we look into data which has already been collected either by you or somebody else. Then you have a specific question in mind, you go through that data, collect data, analyze the data, and then try to answer a question. However, this design has got high risk of bias. Bias in terms of selection, what kind of cases are you selecting, and things like that. Again, on the other hand, when you talk about prospective studies, you are looking into the future, you are looking ahead. You start from the present, you recruit patients, you collect data progressively over the course of 6 months or year, 1 year, whatever it is. And then you come to a conclusion after analysis of the data. Now this is clearly a better type of study. However, it takes a longer time to complete and it takes considerable effort and resources. And however, in the end, you come to straightforward conclusions. Now, if you are looking at a prospective study for your thesis, then you need to do something which is for the short term, like 1 year. You can't do a prospective study for 3 years or 5 years. Because by that time, you won't be able to collect all the data you need. The second type is an observational study. Observational study is something where the investigator does not intervene during the observation process or during the follow-up process. As if you want to see what happens if the patella is not resurfaced after total knee, you do the total knee and you just observe the patients for anterior knee pain. You don't do anything else later on. You just see how many of them, what percentage have pain, what percentage don't have pain. That is a typical observation study. However, an observation study can be prospectively designed with comparative groups. As in, you take two groups where patella has been resurfaced and patella has not been resurfaced. You again observe them for 1 year or 2 years or whatever length of period. Now, this kind of observation study obviously has a higher level of evidence. Another category is an experimental study. Experimental study is typically what is done in clinical trials, where the conditions are controlled, the groups selected are randomized, there is blinding, and all of them receive the study groups. There are two groups, study and control groups. The study groups receive intervention, control groups do not receive intervention. Typical example again from the knee is doing knee arthroscopy and not just doing incisions in patients with osteoarthritis. So that is a typical example of a prospective experimental study. Now, coming down to inclusion criteria. Inclusion criteria is what decides what subjects are you going to include in your study. Now, this again is based on a research question. Now, if you're say studying again the same example, if you're studying about total knee replacement and osteoarthritis, you're obviously going to include patients with knee arthritis who are undergoing total knee replacement. So that is an inclusion criteria. Now, inclusion criteria. With the inclusion criteria, it may involve healthy subjects or subjects with specific disease condition. So that is again depending on what design you have used for your study and what is your objective. Now, an exclusion criteria is something which determines whether a participant participant may be allowed into the study or not. Now, subjects are usually excluded from a study if there is a confounding factor or if the subject introduces a bias in the study. For example, if you are recruiting patients and looking at subjects who have primary osteoarthritis of the knee and who have undergone TKR using two different designs. Now, you don't want to include somebody with rheumatoid arthritis because rheumatoid arthritis has got multiple joint pain. They have got other disabilities. So they may not be exactly good to assess functional outcome or pain. So that kind of pathology you exclude from the study. Although they are eligible for a TKR and they may undergo TKR, you exclude them from the study and you don't include that data in your study. Next we come to outcome measures. What outcome are you looking at? Outcome as in what is the parameter or a variable which you are measuring. Now outcome, there are two types of outcome. The first is, and the most important obviously, the primary outcome. This is the most important outcome of the intervention on a dependent variable. So basically, while you are examining the effect of high flexion design compared to a standard design on knee flexion obviously becomes the primary outcome. So that is what you are interested in and that is what you want to measure and that is what you want to see a difference in between the two. So that is your primary outcome. A secondary outcome is an outcome seen by an intervention that may be related, that is not your direct interest, but that may be related somewhere to the primary outcome. For example, patients with high flex design, they may get discharged early from the hospital compared to a standard design. Now that was not the objective of your study, but you see a significant difference there and you want to report it. So that is a secondary outcome of the study. Now tools and methods I have already discussed in detail in my previous presentation. So basically you have to, in materials and methods, you have to be very extensive and elaborate in describing what methods you have used to collect data, what tools you have used. You have to give each and every detail. And if you are talking about a surgical procedure, you have to obviously give a description of your surgical technique which has been used in each group. And finally, you have to state about the end part of the study. When do you want to stop collecting the data? How long do you want to follow up the patient in order to collect data? So this I have already covered in detail in my previous one. And finally, the last part of your material and method is the statistics. So again, in statistics, you have to extensively explain what are you going to compare, what parameters are you comparing, what tests are you doing, and if you are using a particular test, why are you using that test? All of that has to be described in detail. So this is a typical common scenario, which again is a repeat of what I already said, and Dr. Ashok Shah is going to repeat again. So if for normal distribution and continuous data, you have to use parametric. These are a few examples. What I do is I will give you an example and go through the checklist of materials and methods. Now, for example, if your hypothesis is to assess functional outcome and to see if high flex design is better than the standard design, your study design would be a prospective cohort series, because you are going to assess the patient and follow them over a period of 1 year and see if the function is different in the two. So it automatically becomes a prospective cohort series. Inclusion criteria again here is a rheumatoid arthritis or a primary OA knee who undergoes TKR. So every patient who has rheumatoid arthritis or osteoarthritis and who undergoes TKR can be included in the study. Again, patients who undergo TKR with an imported knee or an imported standard design is also eligible. Patients who undergo a high flex design process is also eligible. However, you can exclude patients who are non-rheumatoid or non-osteoarthritic. So if the pathology is different, you can exclude them. If they have complex knee deformities, for example, if a patient has severe angular deformity of 20 degrees, you can't really compare that person with somebody who has got a 10-degree deformity. So that patient will act as a confounding factor and may affect the result of the entire group. You need to take out that patient. Or somebody who has got a stiff knee with a range of motion less than 50 degrees. Or somebody who is undergoing revision TKR. Now this is a study for a primary TKR, so there is no point including patients who undergo revision TKR. So you automatically exclude them. and other factors. So that depends on what you think is a confounding factor for your study. So based on that. Now outcome measures for this hypothesis, what outcome measures are you going to assess and gather? So clinically you want to check for pain, you want to check for knee range of motion, you want to check for flexion deformity or post-out deformity. Functionally again knee score, function score, and X-ray wise or radiologically you want to look at limb alignment. Now these are the basic outcome measures and experience criteria. Then after this you need to give a detailed description of how you are collecting each and every one of these parameters. Who is collecting it, how you are collecting it, what tools are you using, when are you collecting it, all of this need to be detailed and described in detail. And finally, you also need to include details of surgical technique. Now this is very important for a paper because a lot of times we go back into papers and literature and see how the technique was performed by somebody else. So this is a great learning tool actually. This may not be important for your thesis already, although you have to do it for completion's sake. But if you are writing a paper, then you need to give detailed description of a surgical technique, especially when you are describing something new. And finally, you have to make it very clear what is your study endpoint, whether it is 1 year, 2 years, 6 months, whatever it is, and then a detailed description of the study.